Ruth, Justin, hey, congratulations on your new film, Samson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's always the delight to watch these type of I want to say dark comedies because dark comedies is one of the difficult type of films to actually come out with that. So Ruth, let me toss the first question to you is where the original idea came from for Samson.
I'm going to actually toss that back to Justin because
Oh,
he was actually the seeds of this story concept.
Yeah, so I approached Ruth because we had worked together before, and I said, I have this idea for a movie, and let's see if you have any interest in it. So the concept came from just the kidnapping in the trunk scene, because I had that idea as a film project in film school, and it just stuck with me and wouldn't leave my head. And I was like, I have this idea. This guy and this girl, and they're having an argument about their relationship ending, and they get kidnapped and thrown in a trunk, and that's where the movie starts. And she's like, "Great, I love that." And she took that and expanded it all the way out to where we got to for the future.
I did actually find the story fascinating. So that's actually how it started. But it almost felt like it's three separate movies. It's three different chapters. Could you could
Mhm.
you could you discuss how you guys divided it in your film into those different chapters itself?
Yeah, I think in the very beginning, we were trying to be clever about how to write the script, right? Because we knew we were going to be limited in the budget and our resources. And so the smart way to write a script, knowing that we want to actually make it, is that we can write with those parameters in mind. And for me, I love the theater. And so I was like, I think we can put together very, very long sequences and stay within those sequences. One, because it's just really, really interesting to see these characters kind of form their relationships through their dialogue, but also two, shooting long sequences is actually it's going to be a little bit quicker than 5 or 6 scenes, even 10 scenes within the first 20 pages of the script. So that's kind of how we tackled it in the very, very beginning. And the story itself kind of developed in like an outline form. That's how David and I planned everything. David's our co-writer. And we just knew we wanted to follow these characters as they kind of figured out what was actually happening. And I'm being delicate with my words because I don't want to give away any of the twists that we have planted. Um, but we wanted for the audience to know just enough to keep interested, but then want to keep going to see the other perspectives, to see how the story connects and so forth. And so there was always the plan to kind of do these long sequences to stay with them for a long time, and we wanted to culminate at a certain moment.
So you wanted to develop the characters between the couple itself with their dialogue, with their relationships, and also the dialogue and relationships of the kidnappers themselves. That's
Yeah.
how you want to develop the story.
For sure. I mean, I think that we were trying to make similar parallels within both sets of characters in some form or the other. Because I do think that the story, Samson is really about relationships and a love story and a breakup story in a different format with the kidnappers as well. So we wanted to kind of create a similar parallel storyline between these two sets of characters and kind of wrap it all up, the second half of the film with what's everything that's been revealed.
Most excellent. And of course, a lot of people will see the trailer. They will know it's about a kidnapping. So how did you want to approach, the your kidnapping sequences, particularly the trunk sequences?
As in, are you asking about the fact that we see the kidnapping a couple different times or the trunk moment
For first
in
the
general?
let's talk about the kidnapping scenes,
Okay.
approaching it in different angles first.
Yeah. The kidnapping itself is really like the crux of the action that kicks off the whole story, right? And so we wanted to see in different perspectives as a style choice. I think as scripted, they were just very simple. But while we were prepping, I had the idea of seeing them in three different styles because they're going to be in three different perspectives, right? The first time we see the kidnapping in the very, very opening of the sequence of the movie. is a big wide shot. And because at that point, the audience doesn't really know what's going on. This is just a tease of what's going on. And we just kind of see this from a distance. The second time we see the kidnapping is really with the couple itself, and it feels like it should feel. It is a little violent, it's a little bit scarier, it's more action packed because we're in the character's perspective of the couple. And the third time we see the kidnapping, it's with the kidnappers themselves. And in the scene prior to that, we see them kind of stumble through prepping for the kidnapping itself. And we learn that, like, oh, maybe they're not the best at their job. So that's why that sequence is like, ironically, to a rock song. It's in slow motion. Like they think they're really kind of doing great, but we see kind of details of them missing the mark. So
Mm.
it's meant to kind be with each set of characters and seeing them unfold differently. Um, and it's, it's to keep it interesting as well, right? Like once we're with different sets of characters, we do switch that style a little bit so that cinematically it fits with the tone that we were trying to create.
Well,
And as for the trunk,
y-
yeah, go ahead.
well, before we jump into the trunk, let's have Justin jump in about the cinematics of, filming the
Yeah.
different type of
So when Ruth and I sat down and had this conversation of seeing the scene multiple times, we decided that, not only just shot size in terms of like how wide we were, tight we were, we also changed like, how steady the camera is, whether it was handheld or on a steady cam or on sticks or just sort of to control that vibe. So we tailored the camera movement and the style to each one of these things and created a different, slightly different visual language for each one of the scenes to, have the camera work reflect what was going on in the scene. And we did that throughout the movie, but we particularly paid attention in this part of the movie and a couple other parts of the movie.
well said. Now we could discuss the trunk scene because I love this trunk scene because a lot of things are actually happening, and as a viewer, the perspective that we have, it feels like we were in there with them. So Ruth, tell break down the trunk scene itself for us, and then I'll have Justin talk about how he pulled it off cinematically.
Yeah, I think your initial reaction of like you felt like you were in there, that was our goal, right? We wanted the audience to be really with the two, um, to feel like you're kind of stuck with them, but not feel too claustrophobic-y, right? Like the purpose of the scene, was not to be like a buried, with Ryan Reynolds, which we used as a reference as we were prepping, the sequence. It's really for us to be with them, get to know who they are, and kind of feel what they were going through. Obviously it's a really high stakes situation, but we wanted to be light with it because the couple itself, they're kind of bickering because they've known each other for a long time. And that's kind of where that comedy adds in because we wanted that levity as well. Um, I don't know. I think I really loved working with the actors during this scene, um, because it goes up and down with how they feel, right? It's like I'm terrified to I can't believe I'm stuck here with you to I don't want to die to it's going to be okay. I've got you. And that was really, really fun to work with them on because they move it through very, very quickly. And the way that we shot it is that we shot it literally 13 pages at a time for takes. And I'll let Justin go into that a little bit, but we had to block shoot because of it's so technical. So they did an incredible job knowing the scene, knowing where it ebbs and flows, and really kind of using each other to kind of react and keep the scene going. So I don't know. I loved it. I'm very, very proud of that drunk scene.
Well, Justin, tell us the behind the scenes of
Yeah.
magic with this.
So, uh, since this is how we started I mean, initial concepts of the film, we knew it was going to be really important, the trunk work. And it's also a really long scene. And after Ruth and I watched Buried and some other things and sat down and talked, we knew that we had to have the ability to move the camera anywhere around this trunk. And we knew after doing some tests that it couldn't be a real trunk. So we built an entire set piece, which I designed and worked with a couple other people to construct it. And then we built a rig based on speed rail. So we had a top and a bottom, like, rigging of speed rail kind of like configuration platforms. And we put airbag suspension under between the two platforms so we could shake the trunk in any orientation. And depending on how we inflated or deflated the airbags, it would give us different kind of camera movements. because the camera was physically attached to the rig. So the camera was with the characters the whole time, and that was important so that we could have the feeling of being with them. Because if they're moving and the camera's moving at a different pace, you feel disconnected from them. So that was a lot of work. We designed a rig that we could put the camera where we wanted. We could fly the walls or the trunk lid off or wherever and get the camera positioned anywhere we wanted to. But because there was so much rigging involved, we had to shoot one angle the entirety of the scene, 13 pages, and then pick a new angle and shoot the entirety of it multiple times. And so we went around the trunk, I think, twice in every angle and every side. And from a lighting perspective, since they're in a dark trunk, we only had brake lights to play with. And we also had two little holes where speakers were that we could have shafts of light coming in. And since we had shot our drive or actual car driving work prior to that, we knew generally how the car moved and generally where the light would turn. And so we were able to use a large HMI to pound light through those tiny holes, and the light was on a wheels so we can move it back and forth to get the streaks of light. And we had a poor PA just shaking leaves in front of the light to get light streaks. And, we had two grips on the rig shaking the whole thing. And it worked out really, really well. But it was a lot of, speed rail rigging and parts moving around. And then we'd be set and shooting for a while. And then it would be like, oh, we got to move everything all over again. And it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work to get everything to line up. But I think we did a really good job of making it feel cohesive, feel like we have enough camera angles and the actors don't feel claustrophobic. And yet we still feel like it's a real trunk and it's not like the camera is like impossibly far away from people. And we also chose to shoot on sort of medium focal lengths and a little bit longer focal lengths so that we don't feel like it's like awkwardly distorted or anything like that. And we're just like present with the characters.
Wow, that is so impressive. Ruth, I'm so glad you didn't have to film this inside the trunk, but how do you direct all of this with so many moving parts going on at the same time, particularly with your actors in such a enclosed space?
We rehearsed it like it was a play. We essentially, I knew every single time they were going to flip over, every single line that they're going to flip back, when they were going to move to discover the bag, when they were going to move to discover the screwdriver. All of that was rehearsed very much like we were in a play that was a 13-minute scene, and they just got it in their body, And so when we were rigging, when Justin was rigging the whole thing, I mean, the first day of that rig took a couple out. It would took a while. So that was a lot of time that I think I drew out and taped the trunk on a sound blanket in the studio somewhere, placed all the props and kind of just blocked it with them and rehearsed it with them. And we just knew exactly what they were going to do before they stepped into the box. So as soon as they were in the box of the trunk, it was just go time. And obviously they had to pivot a lot because being in a moving box trunk was very uncomfortable and it was surprisingly loud. I remember that just because of the rig and then the light swinging. So it was really on them to just trying to focus in of what we had rehearsed before. And my tweaks were mostly for like comedy spike ups or slowing down a certain part and just pacing it out okay. I think the beauty of the difference between a theater and a film is that we had the luxury of stopping and going and playing with time. And so that's kind of what we did. Like if we needed a pickup, we were able to go do that correctly. And I kind of knew the moments where we needed something different and was able to be very specific about that. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it also. I'm a fan of chaos, and I think it was just an exciting space. Like once we were up and at it and everyone saw like the first take of what we were doing, I think everyone was like, oh yeah, this is totally gonna work. It was either gonna be horrible or it was gonna be great. And so very quickly we saw that it was working. We very much felt like we were in the trunk with them. And, Video Village was really excited. And actually I remember Doug, who was our operator, he was kind of right in there most of the time. He was like, wow, that felt pretty good. and I think kind of that feedback on the day from the crew was also very helpful and it kind of energized the cast to kind of keep going because it was very hard for them.
Wow. I love this Agent of Chaos. I'm not sure if like DPs are loving agents of chaos themselves.
This movie was a challenge, but it was a fun challenge, and so we just rolled with the punches. I mean, I remember just walking around, and crew member would come up to me like, "Oh, we got to fix this thing. There's this huge problem. Like, not the hill to die on. We're just shooting it. We're going with it." And we just kept rolling with all the punches, no matter what happened. Fixture cars breaking, bears in the parking lot in our woods location, actor schedule changes. We just went with it, and that was the vibe of the movie was just like get through it and have fun.
It is a lot of fun, and that's a great scene. I also want to discuss one of the another scene in your film. Not to put out any spoilers or anything, but you did use Alice to her full potential because she has a lovely singing voice, as a lot of people will remember her from Zoe's Extraordinary playlist. Tell Ruth, tell us about why that scene in this film, and tell us about that music.
Yeah. Um, I've talked about this scene in enough interviews where I think it's okay to talk about it. So, Emma has a musical moment. Um, and for me, I think music does an incredible job at laying out a feeling, right? Setting the tone for what's next. I think us as everyday people, we listen to music to get in a certain mood, to feel a certain energy. And I think it has that beautiful power. And I wanted to use that in all its magnificent glory in this movie. And so in script stage, I was in search of the right song. And I want something moody and dark, but I think lyrically it really needs to represent the fact that Emma is taking the story in her own hands, right? It's really a shift in perspective. Whereas right before this moment, we are with the couple, we are with the kidnappers, and we're with all four of them at the same time. This is the first and only time we're really just with her. So it becomes her story. And I needed to kind of switch that perspective in a really great way. And this was it. The musical moment was it. And luckily, I was kind of going back to my Rolodex of musician friends and amazing artists I used to work with back in New York, and Claire London, who's the original artist of the song and writer of the song. She's an old friend, so I reached out and I was like, I am writing this movie and we have this moment. I want to use this. Are you okay? And she's like, absolutely. And it was perfect. It was a perfect song lyrically for it. It felt really, really good. It really kind of set the tone for the rest of the film. Um, and but I know that in doing so, our casting pool shrunk significantly because I knew that we were always going to re-record, right? Claire has an incredible voice, but we just wanted to make sure the actress was going to be able to put it in her own voice. So um, Alice was the only choice in that way. I remember in the very beginning of my casting conversations with our casting directors of like, okay, Asian American artists who can really sing. It's a small number of people that we are aware of. And so we were really lucky that Alice came in and did a great job in her audition, but she was always our number one, so it was like a no-brainer for us. And we got really lucky, and she killed it. She thinks that she can't do rock, but she can definitely do rock. She can do anything vocally.
Justin, can you do rock? Can you tell us about filming this almost like it's a music video in its own way?
Yeah, well, we did approach it like a music video, very much so. Literally, all of it was approached like a music video, and we knew that we had to bridge the narrative, the visual cinematic narrative, the musical sort of narrative. And I mean, the sequence, without giving spoilers, is a very like intense visuals, and it's very dark, and it literally at night and dark tonally. And so it was a challenge because we on a budget on a limited time scale in the woods in the middle of the night with no like reference lights. I mean, the only lighting that we had that was like we could motivate off of with the headlights of the car and the tail lights. And so it was the scene starts like at dusk and going into night. And so it just we had to use like different shots to do different bridging of both the tone and the lighting changes as we go from the cinematic narrative of the project into the somewhat surreal music video section of it. And it just all of it was shot choice, lighting choice, camera movement, camera style. That was we had a steady cam. We only used steady cam for 3 moments in the movie. In the parking lot, we use it in the during one of the parts of kidnapping, where everything kind of falls apart, and then for this musical number. And we used it sparingly and we used it intentionally. And our lighting, even though again we're in the middle of night in the woods with a very low budget, we just were really strategic about our lighting placement. We had a limited amount of HMI units, and we placed them in different spots to sort of give us like edge light. And then we also had unmotivated light because it was a music video, so we could use unmotivated light to create tone and feel. And we wanted the light to be moving, and the camera to be moving, and the characters to be moving. And then again, approaching like a music video, we have more of a narrative bit to it, and then we have these moments of just singing. We get that Ruth editorially interspersed. And so it was just kind of bouncing around and figuring out all the different visual languages we could tell, and then just putting all those building blocks together that they had enough, footage and enough style to work with in post. And then when we were in color correction, our colorist did a lot of work for us to help us bridge all the things, including like changing the color of the headlights to be as a bridging tool from the like realistic look to our music video look to help motivate that change and some other pieces. So it was really just kind of like taking all the visual language, all the tool sets we had at our disposal, and just orchestrating them in a way to bridge from one to the other and then back.
And I'll just add too, it's like we just really needed to trust that this was going to work, right? I think this is the section in pre-pro and development where actually even script phase, when I did a reading of it, they're like, we're not sure about this. We don't know how it's gonna work. And there's a version of this where we just cut up a montage with 20 seconds of the song and it still bridges that story, but just needed to trust and lean in that it was going to work. And trying it and really committing to it, I think saved the day. Like we all committed to making it the best we possibly could, and we all worked so hard on it. So I think there was a sense of relief when we were in the editing room of just like, yeah, this is it.
Well
Yeah,
said.
it absolutely worked. We
Yeah.
just went with it 100%. And I also don't think the movie would be as interesting or as good without that. It would be a really dark scene if we just played it straight cinematically. It's
Mhm.
a very heavy scene.
Yeah.
It is, and it's a wonderful scene. Well, I've taken a lot of your time, so but before I let you go, I'm just curious, real fast, is how much thought did you actually put into this ending? Because knowing it is a dark comedy, right?
That there's a lot going into the ending, and I think the ending is one of those things. My hope is that an audience will have a conversation about the ending with whomever they're watching it with, or someone else that watched the movie, because it's maybe not as crystal clear as what people think it is. And again, it's hard to talk about it without really giving away, but I think it is it's meant to be tricky. It's meant to be like, huh, I wonder if that really happened, or huh, I wonder, how they pulled this off. And because it is Emma's story, I hope the audience will learn enough about her character and how she picks up on things and how she's able to take action to really have their own opinion on what happens in the very end. It's all very, very planned. Uh, everything is very, very specific, Gig, and I think that's one of the things that works with the movie so well and between our collaboration with Justin and the whole team is like we knew exactly what we were doing and how we were going to do it because otherwise it just wouldn't work. The end is the thriller part of our film. Um, and I think it really kind of keeps people on the edge of their seat. And I love that.
Well, people are definitely going to talk about this film, and you guys, it felt like you guys filmed three different movies. So thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you very much, Justin. It's a pleasure speaking to you both about Samson. And I can't wait to see what's your next projects after this. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.